Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benji Bruce here with SpeakingLifestyle.com, and I want to talk about the structure behind your speaker contracts and essentially how speaker contracts really work. A lot of speakers, they kind of have just questions in general about speaker contracts. I mean, especially when starting in the speaking industry. So in this video, I'm going to answer a few questions about the contracts and give you like a little behind the scene looks about these agreements and what their purpose is. Now, you might be thinking like, well, the purpose of a contract is so that nobody screws me over, and if they do, I'm going to sue them. But that's not really the purpose. I mean, unless your like speaking gig is for like a huge sum of money, like $1 million or something, then very rarely is it worth spending the time and money it's going to take to actually sue someone. So, what's the real purpose behind a contract? I mean, the purpose of your speaker contract is to just remind all parties of what was agreed upon. And when you do this right, when you structure your business right, you're going to essentially have all the money before you even get on stage to speak. So you won't be able to get screwed anyway. So first things first, you only want to do business with people who you feel like they won't actually screw you over in the first place. If you feel like you need a contract because you think that the person's going to try to screw you over and they won't give you the money, then you better not do the deal to begin with. That's essentially just common sense. But here's how you structure your contract. I mean, first, you need to get all the information up front, all the information about the event, and put that into the contract. Obviously, you need to know what you're going to be speaking on, how long you're going to be speaking, what they're paying for, like the flight, the hotel, all that sort of stuff. And you need to have the contact information of the person actually hiring you, the contact information of the main person, just in case you need to contact them. Now, the way your contract should be set up is that you get 50% non-refundable deposit in order to secure the date. Always get 50%. I mean, when someone calls me up to hire me, we essentially agree on all the information, and I always get a 50% deposit. If they don't send a 50% deposit, then I don't do the gig. It's that simple. I literally refuse to do any gig where I don't get 50%. Even if someone called me up and they wanted to hire me for next week and they didn't have the time to actually mail the deposit, to mail a check, I'd just take a credit card over the phone or use like the Square app or even just PayPal. Somehow I would get the 50% deposit or I don't do the gig. Always get 50%. The contract also states that the deposit needs to be received by a certain time. The max that I'll give someone is 14 days to send the deposit. And if I don't get the deposit within that time period, then I'll let them know that the date will actually be given to someone else if someone else calls for that same date. It's important that you include this part into your contract, because if you don't, then they're going to delay on sending you the money. And I actually learned this the hard way. I was contacted about an event. We agreed to everything. I sent them the contract asking for the deposit, but there wasn't really a specific date to send it back by. And so like a couple of weeks went by and I sent an email saying like, hey, what's up with the deposit? Are we still go? And they said that they're going to send it. And they're like, yeah, everything's still good. A month goes by and still no deposit. So I sent another email, and this time, however, they actually responded back by saying that, hey, we're sorry, the company president actually got a different speaker because he was a lot cheaper. And I was thinking like, oh my goodness. And about a month and a half passed without the contract before I essentially got the email saying that they went with a cheaper speaker. And it was essentially my fault for not getting the money just really fast, just not giving them a due date. And I mean, as a side note, I actually found out that they didn't like the speaker, and then they hired me for next year, but they paid way more because I tend to increase my prices all the time. But if I would have given them a deadline, then I would have gotten the money within the 14 days and the gig would have been mine, which essentially leads me to another very important point. The gig isn't yours until the money is in the bank. I don't care if they sign a contract and they send it to you. I don't care if they promise to hire you for several gigs. I don't care if you have like an incredible relationship with them. I mean, I don't care about any of that. The gig isn't yours until the money is in the bank and their check clears, obviously. I can't tell you how many times speakers have thought that they sealed the deal because they got a contract signed or whatever, and then the client just cancels. I mean, their contract might state that the client owes them the money. But I mean, think about it. Are you really going to waste your time just taking a client to court just for a couple grand? Probably not. I mean, why on earth would you? The gig isn't yours until the money is in the bank. So what happens is you send the contract to the client, and it has a very specific date for when they need to return it with the deposit. And if they don't return it with the deposit, then you tell them like, look, I'm going to have to give this to someone else. If someone else calls, I have to give it to them because they're going to give me the deposit. So this creates a natural urgency, which gets people to take action. Now, there are some places that will say, they might say like, hey, we can't really give a deposit because that's just how our business operates, and we just don't, we can't make the decision, and we just have policies in place, but we'll give you the full fee when you get here and things like that. But here's the thing. I mean, you have to just stand strong. I mean, you have to think about how your business operates. I've only done it once where I've actually given in one time, and that was just when I was kind of starting out, kind of just getting more serious, just because I didn't really know any better. It was essentially with a college, and they wanted to hire me. We agreed on everything. I asked for a deposit, but they said, "Oh, we can't really do that." They said like, oh, we have to talk to some department, and they have to send the check out later. And then they said, I'll essentially receive it within 30 days of actually showing up, within 30 days. So not only would I not get the money at the gig, but I had to wait 30 days after the gig. And the thing is, I thought this was actually normal with colleges because I was told that it was normal with colleges. But I also thought like, okay, the reason I agreed to it was because I figured it's a college. They're not going to screw me. And they didn't screw me, but I mean, I did get the check within the 30 days, but if I had to go back, I would have done it very different. I essentially would have said, I need a deposit, doesn't matter. The one thing that I found out is that if they are serious about hiring you, then they'll figure out a way to get you that 50% deposit. I've done events with several other colleges, and they pretty much say the same thing. They said that they can't send the deposit, and I just said, okay, I'm sorry, I can't do the gig. I say I can only do the gig with a 50% deposit, and lo and behold, they figure out a way to get the deposit. Several companies, they might say the same thing. They might say that they can't give you a deposit because of like accounting or something, but if you stick to your guns, then they'll figure out a way if they're serious about hiring you. And I can't tell you how many times someone has said to me that they can't send a deposit because of company policy. And when they realize that I'm willing to actually drop the gig, I'm willing to just let it go, and they just figure out a way to do it. They figure out a way to get it. It's definitely going to happen with speaker bureaus as well. If you work with bureaus, especially at the beginning when you don't know each other. Almost all the speaker bureaus that I've worked with have tried to keep the deposit. They say things like, hey, once you do the gig, then we'll send you the money. And I tell them like, look, if I don't get the deposit, then it's a no deal. I mean, if I don't get the money, then I'm not going to do the gig. I need a deposit before I ever put the gig on my calendar. And I actually did this with one of the biggest checks that I was actually going to get for a speaking gig. And the speaker bureau, they were talking to my virtual assistant who represented me, and I told the assistant actually to make sure that they send the deposit. And the assistant actually came back and said like, hey, the speaker bureau, they said that they're going to send the money after the gig. And I said, oh, hell no. I said to tell them like, look, either they send the deposit or I don't do the gig. And they actually sent the check because the company really wanted me. So don't ever let anyone keep your money. I don't care if it's a bureau, a client, a college, whatever. If the money isn't in the bank, then you don't have the gig. there are so many things that could go wrong if you don't have the deposit. And I mean, they could cancel. There are so many things that could go wrong. And the second part that of your contract, it should actually state that you need to receive the other half of the money before you get on stage to speak. So the contract says that you get the other 50% upon arrival at the event. And depending on what bank you have, you can actually scan the check right there with your phone. Like just take a picture with your phone app and it'll scan the check and the money just immediately gets deposited into your account. That's why it's literally impossible for you to get scammed in the process. I mean, you technically get all the money before you ever get on stage. So let's say that you agree to pay for your flight because you've added it into your speaking fee. Well, don't like pay for the flight the second they agree to hire you. I mean, they say like, okay, yeah, we want to hire you. And you say, yeah, okay, I'll pay for the flight because you included everything. And then before you get the deposit, you book the flight. Don't do that. You want to wait until you get the money, which should be within 14 days max. I usually put really about 10 days on there, but 14 days max. You should get the deposit, then you actually make sure it clears in your bank account, and then you pay for the flight or you pay for whatever you need to pay for. I remember not too long ago, someone actually tried to scam me by actually asking to hire me for an event in South Africa, and it was like a church, and they were masquerading as a church, and the event was about like 6 weeks away, and I thought that was kind of weird because they left it to be so late. So that was like the first clue that something weird was happening. Because very few people actually pay a lot of money for speakers and leave it so late. So we agreed on $15,000 for a 60-minute presentation. They pay for the flight, the hotel, the food, all that stuff. And they said yes. And they also agreed to send a 50% deposit with the contract. So they agreed to everything. But remember, the gig isn't yours until the money is in the bank. So then they send an email and they actually asked me like, hey, do you have a green card in order to actually work in South Africa? And I thought to myself like, I don't think I need a green card. And they said like, if I do, then to scan it and to show them. But I was thinking like, I don't need a green card to speak at an event in South Africa. So that's what I told them. I said, look, I don't need a green card to actually speak at this event. So basically I responded. Of course, they said like, look, you do need a green card and it's going to cost a certain amount of money. And I thought to myself like, do I really need a green card? So I actually texted another speaker who I knew spoke in South Africa literally like a month before. So I sent him a text and I said, look, did you need a green card? And he said, no, I didn't need a green card. You don't need a green card. And so that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, man, I bet this is a scam. So I just replied. I said, okay, no problem. I'll pay for the green card. Just send the 50% deposit and then I'll get the green card. I mean, think about it. If someone sends the $7,500 as a deposit, I don't care if the green card costs $500. I'll give them $500 out of what they already paid me. So later I essentially just Googled their email. I realized it was a scam, but essentially the process is scam proof. If you know how to build your speaking business in this way, you're essentially scam proof because you basically get all the money before you get on stage. So, I mean, even let's say we agreed on the $15,000 and they send a check for $16,000, which is a scam, by the way. Then they actually ask you to return $1,000 because they overpaid. Well, if that ever happens, then you could actually send them an email before you actually cash the check and let them know that, hey, they overpaid and you'll give them $1,000 when you arrive. So you can do that. And that's like another scam that they do. But essentially, the money is always in your bank before you ever spend any money on them, any money at the event. The way that scam works, if you don't know it, by the way, is they essentially overpay with a bad check, like a Western Union thing. And because it takes a while to actually clear, you send them $1,000 of your real money and they basically make money and you realize it was a bad check and you're out like $1,000. But that's like a whole new topic. I mean, the purpose of your contract is to really remind you of all the details of an event, to get the person's contact information, to get the deposit, then the rest of the money, get the rest of the money before the event. You don't need an attorney to create a long contract for you. In fact, my contract gives just basic information, and it says that I can use video footage and all that stuff for my marketing materials. Other than that, it just says what we agreed on, like how long I'm going to be on stage, all that stuff. It just has everyone's phone numbers, all that stuff, just so everyone remembers. What you'll find is that the more you charge, the better your clients actually get. So when you start charging, I'd say about $5,000 or more, the clients get really, really cool. I mean, they give you everything you need. They help you with stuff and more. You never have to chase them down for the money. They'll come up to you and they'll give you the money. They don't mind if you use the video footage in your marketing. They're just really cool, and that's why like a contract doesn't need to be like this long 5-10 page thing. If your contract actually looks serious, then you can actually delay the process for getting hired. So what's going to happen is that the person in charge of hiring speakers, they're going to get your contract, see that it's like 10 pages with all these technical legal terms because it was drafted up by an attorney that you hired, and then they're going to think like, oh man, they're going to essentially, they won't want to get in trouble. So they're going to send it to the legal department of the company to look over before they actually sign the thing. So it's going to literally delay the process, all because you wanted the contract to be some legit contract, some legal contract written up by an attorney that costs like $500 an hour or something. But if they see that it's like a 2-page agreement, just has some basic information with a little more about how you can record things and use it for your marketing, they won't really care. They're just going to sign it. And one other thing that I want to mention, you might have heard that you should call it like an agreement instead of a contract, but in reality, it doesn't matter what you call it. People know what it is. I mean, just because you call it an agreement versus a contract, that doesn't really change anything. I mean, people aren't dumb. They know that they're paying you a certain amount to speak. They know it's a contract, whether you call it an agreement or a contract. And one other thing, the cancellation clause, by the way, your cancellation clause should be very simple, because if the client cancels, basically what it's going to be, if the client cancels within a certain amount, within a certain time period, like 30 days or so, then you essentially want to have in the contract that they still owe you the entire speaking fee. And the reason for this is because you might have turned down another speaking gig when they cancel. So you lose out not only on that money that they were supposed to give you, but you lose out on other money that you could have gotten because you had to say no to them. So I mean, if a client does cancel, by the way, you're not going to sue them for the full fee, or even really ask for it. Actually, you just want to put that in your contract, just to kind of let them know, like, hey, don't just cancel on me because I do have the right to the full speaking fee. But if they do cancel, don't just say like, oh, give me my money or I'm going to sue you. Don't do that. What you want to do is just ask like, hey, do you guys want to reschedule? And then you can figure out a time that's available for both of you guys at no extra cost. This basically, if you do that, then you're essentially going to create a ton of goodwill in your favor, and you're more likely to get repeat gigs and referrals. And the contract also states that if anything happens and you can't make it for any reason, then you'll return the full fee, including the deposit. I mean, that's only fair. If you don't show up, you better give them back their money. So now your contract is also it'll vary depending on the type of the event. So like, let's say you're a seminar speaker and you're selling products, then it's going to be more detailed because the promoter is going to want 50% of the product sales, all that stuff. Just don't agree to anything that you don't want to uphold. So if they say that they want you to sell your product, but you're not allowed to give like the same presentation 60 days after that, or they want to handle the product sales and they want to handle the credit cards, and then they'll give you the money 45 days later. If you don't want to do that, then just tell them like, hey, That's not what I want to do. I want to be the one accepting the payment since this is my product. So you have to essentially know what your walkaway point is. This is just negotiation in general. I mean, if you're just cool about it and you let people know why you want something in a contract or why you want something changed, then they're probably going to be cool about it. I mean, I know that Speaker Bureau, they put in their contract that any gig that I get within 90 days of the event, it was theirs, even if it didn't come from the gig itself. And I thought, how ridiculous is that? And I just told them outright, I said, look, that's not going to happen. I said, look, I'll give you guys all the gigs that I get as a result of this gig. I'll give you all the spinoff gigs and not just 90 days. I'll just keep giving it to you. But you guys aren't going to get gigs that I get myself. I said, that's ridiculous. So I told them how it would work. And they say, yeah, no problem. They just changed the contract. And of course, we didn't have a problem. But if you don't ask for it, then they're not going to give it to you. So just think about what's fair, what you want to do. Just think about that in general. Just make sure you know what your walkaway points are, like the deposit, stuff like that, and just keep it simple. Speaker contracts, they're not meant so you can actually sue people. Its purpose is so you know the details of the event and so everyone can actually keep track of everything. And if you want a copy of my speaker contract, then just go to speakinglifestyle.com, go to the members area, and you can download a copy. So that's the basics of speaker contracts.